Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate having you guys. And on the back of when this video comes out yesterday, we had a lot of Americans performing. We know that a lot of the guys were even on the score sheet, like McKinney, but we will be focusing on Reyna. I think everybody knows he's the most polarizing figure in our roster. Some may say he's the most talented. Some, like some pundits who previously wore the USNT jersey, said that he should go back to MLS, and then out of nowhere, to be honest, I wasn't expecting it. He made the match day. He played against Barcelona. So we'll touch more on what Lala's and Donovan said and what Dempsey said about what they said. But Braden, straight to the point, how shocked were you to see Gio playing, and what did you think about his performance?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we make this video like every month, right? It's always something about Gio Reyna. What's his future? Where is he going to go? How does he get back to his best? Something like that. But I thought it was a real surprise, honestly, to see him starting. It was his first start in over a year for Dortmund, which is pretty significant that it comes against one of the best teams in the world who are now second in the Champions League. Massive, massive game for Dortmund. Unfortunately, they didn't get the result. But yeah, I mean, I think there was like a couple notable decisions made by Nuri Sahin. Of course, Reyna starting, Julien Joinville, the 18-year-old Belgian winger, starting as well over certain other players. I think was a little bit of a shock. I don't know necessarily if it worked to perfection. I think a large part of it was because Julian Brandt and Max Bayer were both out with an injury. I don't think Reyna would have gotten even close to as many minutes if they weren't, but he got his opportunity, and I don't think he looked bad. I don't think he really did anything too great. I mean, I will say he had one or two nice through balls that could have resulted in something, but of course, I mean, anyone who watches Barcelona knows their high line and how well it works, so of course the players were always caught offside. But other than that, he had one pretty poor giveaway in his defensive third that luckily for Dortmund wasn't capitalized on by Barca. But other than that, I mean, I think it was just kind of standard. He was, I would say, anonymous at times, but it wasn't necessarily a negative performance by any means. And for this being his first real opportunity of the season for Dortmund, I thought all things considered more positive than negative came out of it. So it was nice seeing him in the lineup, and maybe this is a sign of things to come.
For me, the biggest takeaway is he's fit, because I feel like we were even dry on any updates and what his injury situation is. Sadly, there's always something coming up, always this minor setback here and there. So I was genuinely surprised where I was having lunch, and I saw that Gio was on the starting lineup. And yeah, I agree with you. I will say I'll be a little bit more negative right here. I expected a little bit more. Maybe our expectations with Gio were always a little unfair. Maybe there's that argument to make. But I just felt like he was not nonchalant. It's not like he was zoning out during the game, but he wasn't effective. But let me just get one thing straight, though, to play a little bit of his defense right here. I don't think that Dortmund were ever going to win that game. I think Shaim is a little bit clueless from what I've seen from Dortmund this season. I think that there are a lot of things that he could fix on, but ultimately it was nice to see that he still trusted upon, whether Brandt was injured. He still was the next guy up, and he got a lot of minutes. I expected him to maybe be subbed out at halftime, but he got a little bit more than that. Hopefully, it's a sign of more opportunities to come, as there are always options lurking around of where he should go. Not in fact where he will go, or any rumors. Even during the summer, didn't have any updates on that. But all of that lack of action brought the sentence of the century. Maybe Landon Donovan saying that he should be a soccer player, not a soccer practicer. And I mean, we have to touch base on this. I'm pretty sure all of you guys watching, let us know what you thought about those statements, because I saw some people were more leaning towards their side, where he should go to MLS and maybe capitalize on some minutes that he could grab there. I'll leave it over to you, Braden. Do you, I mean, like Dempsey said, Lala's and Donovan, they were kind of putting their MLS hats on, but what is your stance on it? Do you think a guy like Gio, where we see he has kind of stalled his development, should he go to MLS, get some minutes, or do you think his best shot is to just toughen it out until the summer and hopefully get a better move then? Or should he go out alone anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll give Landon Donovan a little bit of credit. I think too often some USMNT fans like to be a little bit too generous towards the players, or look, not to say that we shouldn't look on the positive side at times, but I think we give them the benefit of the doubt maybe a little too much. So he rightfully called him out for not being fit for a very extended period of time, not getting a lot of minutes. Even when he went on loan, that was a bit of a disaster last season. And I have to admit, the soccer player not practice your thing, it made me laugh a little bit. So well done to Donovan. But outside of that, completely brain dead take from LD, who is apparently one of our biggest legends, even though he decided to support Mexico in the 2018 World Cup. I don't understand how people still think this guy has rational takes. I mean, it's one thing being a great player and another thing being a great analyst. Some just can't do both. And clearly Donovan and Lawless, for that matter as well, are more of the player side, even though I think Lawless himself was a little bit overrated at times. But that's a little bit irrelevant to the topic. I don't think Gio Reyna should go to MLS by any means. I just don't think it makes sense. I do see the point that he's trying to make, that it would be a lot easier for Gio to stay fit and get consistent minutes, because let's face it, he'd probably be one of the best players, if not the best player, on any MLS team that he went to. I think the one that Lawless in particular mentioned was the LA Galaxy, who just won MLS Cup, by the way. Congratulations to them. With Ricky Puig now out with an ACL injury, maybe there's a spot for the next few months to start the next season at the number 10 role. I just don't see it. I mean, sure, he could stay fit because MLS is a lot less demanding than these leagues in Europe, particularly like the Bundesliga where he plays. There's a lot of high intensity there. MLS, not as much so. You have a lot more time on the ball. So I do think he would be able to avoid injuries, get a lot of minutes. But are minutes valuable, really, when they're coming at such a low level? I mean, he could also go out on loan to, let's say, the Belgian league and get probably a similar level there. I mean, is that really what we want from him? I don't think so. I don't think it's really too beneficial for his career to take that huge of a step back, especially when it is across continents to MLS and then having to come back to Europe. I just don't think it makes sense for any means, especially since if it was a 6-month loan, which I believe was what Lawless proposed, he wouldn't even be playing for the first 2 months of it because the MLS season doesn't start until basically the beginning of March. So I think it would just be an overall bad decision. That being said, I don't think he should make a move at all in January. We saw what happened last time with the Nottingham Forest move. Of course, it was a bad idea by all parties. I think he went to a place where their best player played his position in a league where, to be honest, with his injury concerns, he should not be playing in, given the physicality of it. I think a more technical league like Serie A, like La Liga, would make more sense for Gio Reyna. And I mean, those options were on the table. He made the wrong call. It is what it is. But I think he needs to learn from his mistakes and just not risk it, because let's face it, in the January transfer window, there's not a lot of time to get deals done, and there's a lot less players on the market, which means there's a lot less teams who are in need of players. So the ideal destinations aren't necessarily going to be there for a player to move. And at times we see transfers in January fail because of this, not necessarily going to the ideal spots. I think Reyna, especially given the fact that he just started in one of their biggest games of the season, injuries to other players or not, he's going to continue to get opportunities if he impresses in the minutes that he does get, presumably off the bench for the majority of them. But overall, I just think it's a lot safer and a lot better atmosphere for him to be in at Borussia Dortmund for the rest of the season. And then in the summer, we'll see. We'll evaluate from there. I'm sure we'll make another video in the summer about Gio Reyna, so we'll talk about where he should go then. But I think for now, Dortmund staying there for the rest of the season is his best option, and hopefully he can build on this performance and maybe get some goals, some assists, and solidify his spot, maybe not as a starter but as a key rotational player for them.
Yeah, it is a quarterly update, and we'll definitely have it out. I mean, we may even have it out when we talk about players who need to move. I kind of agree with you. Looking back at what happened last year and the agent that he has, and a few other things as well. I just wanted to give my take on the MLS thing. I agree with you. I think schedule-wise, it doesn't make much sense. I don't think those guys can really put 2 and 2 together and realize that he would just hone his skills as a soccer practicer. If he went to MLS for 2 months, I mean, he'd be good at that. And maybe I will say on Donovan, one of our best players ever. Some may say he's the best ever. Great player. But I think he reflects a little bit of his frustrations of not making it in Europe, which he was very vocal about throughout his career, and to some of these players. He's always very quick to suggest they should come up to MLS, and I don't think it's just the MLS agenda. Maybe he is projecting a little bit of that frustration. But Talking about next summer, I think we both agree he needs just a new scenery, a place where he can succeed. I think ideally he would need to move on, but it's encouraging to see that he got some minutes. Maybe he gets the opportunity to show and play for a move, really, or maybe you never know. Shine may get fired. I think that is a real possibility. You never know if someone comes in. But then we have to talk what is suitable for Gio, because I don't know if a lot of people know this. We're just bringing this is factual. He is on over 2 million euros a year. I think close to 2.5 million a year. Just to put into perspective, that's the same amount of money that Takefusa Kubo is, that Kopani is, Raspadori at Napoli. I know he's not playing that much right now. Guys that are at a similar age, play at a similar position, and are on either the same amount of money or less. For example, to put into perspective, Malik Tillman's on 300K a year. So when you really weigh in the injury record, the off the pitch drama, which hopefully the European clubs aren't really caught on to, and the agent that he has, which is a high profile agent as Jorge Mendes, it kind of thins out who would be in for Gio. Only Prem clubs, I think, would have the funds to pay for that salary. I have to ask you, Brandon, I think in every video we're going to do this, and I'll ask you guys watching the video as well, where should he go? Realistic options, where you think he could fit in. Keep it in mind. Do you think, and I'll ask you this one as well as an extra, do you think he is willing to take a step back in terms of money? Because I think he will need to get a pay cut at some point if he wants to move.
Honestly, yeah, I think it's a very interesting discussion because I think Dortmund kind of put him in a tough spot. Obviously, they wouldn't have envisioned his career, I guess, going this way with all the injuries. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, even on 2.5 million, he's still their third lowest earner in terms of real first team members. Obviously, you have guys like Cole Campbell who are emerging from the second team who are on a lot less money, but excluding those guys, it's only the backup keeper and I think Jan Quoto was the other one who are below him in terms of salary. So it's not even like he's getting paid a lot for Dortmund. It's just the size of a club that Dortmund is. I mean, of course, they're one of the most well-supported clubs, of course, in Germany, but all around the world as well. Very high profile, and it makes things challenging. Like you said, I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons why he did go to Nottingham Forest. I think a lot of the other options, obviously I don't have inside sources or anything like that, but just speculating that a lot of his other options, we heard rumors of La Liga links like Real Sociedad, like Sevilla. I think some of those clubs maybe probably wanted Dortmund to pay the majority of his wages, and I don't think that's something that Dortmund would have agreed to. Probably something that Jorge Mendes would not have wanted. Forest were probably the only ones willing to actually pay that much. Plus, I think they paid a $1 million loan fee as well, which was a little bit strange considering how much they played him. But yeah, I mean, I think the Premier League, in terms of that option, is probably the only one, which is another reason why actually I don't want him going on loan in January. It just doesn't make sense. It'd be another situation like that. Maybe he goes to like Ipswich or something, where again, one of their best players. I think Amari Hutchinson is pretty solid for them playing that position. I just think wherever he ended up going in that league probably would not work out. So I think whether or not this is a realistic option, I honestly don't know. I don't know Gio Reyna as a person. He hasn't really had to face this kind of decision before. Serginho Dest did, and I think he needs to follow in Dest's footsteps and humbling himself a little bit and taking a step back in terms of the size of club or the size of the league maybe that he's playing in. I think Ajax is the perfect spot for him. But I mean, you mentioned Malik Tillman only being on 300K per year. It would require a monumental change in wages. He'd have to probably give up at least 2 million a year, which is, I mean, that's a lot of money to give up. Let's face it. I think it's a lot more realistic probably for him to take maybe a rotation role, continue at Dortmund, or move to another club in a top 5 league where maybe he won't play the most, but he'll still be making a decent amount of money. But I think in terms of his career, if he wants to do the one step back for 2 steps forward type thing that Dest did when he joined PSV on loan from Barca and then eventually on a permanent last summer, I think he needs to take a step back and just find consistent football. Not in MLS, but in one of the best clubs, in one of the best development leagues in the world, the Eredivisie. Ajax are a fallen giant. They're trying to get back to the golden days of being, of course, one of the most highly respected clubs in Europe. They've fallen on tough times recently. Last year was a disaster for them, frankly. They're doing a little bit better this season, but I think bringing in a player like Gio Reyna would help them a lot in terms of creating goals. I mean, if you look at their goals scored compared to PSV, who are currently top of the league by some margin, it's not even close. PSV have already scored 24 more goals in the league than them. It's only been 15 games. I mean, that's honestly incredible. It's a testament to how well PSV are doing as well. But I think for a club like Ajax, a player like Gio Reyna coming in would help them a lot. And for Reyna, of course, valuable minutes, consistent game time in definitely a decent league. He'd still be playing European football. Of course, they're in the Europa League. It looks like they're going to progress to the next stage. And overall, I just think it makes the most sense. I guess that part doesn't really matter because he'd be coming in next season, but you know what I mean. They're going to be a consistent Champions League, Europa League club. And I think that just seems like right now the most plausible option, because whenever we made this video in the past, we've been trying to find places in top 5 leagues where maybe he can go. I just don't think they're really realistic anymore in terms of actually getting real minutes. Only clubs like smaller, maybe bottom half of the table clubs, and let's be honest, they're not going to pay him those wages.
Yeah, I will say also a very obvious point that we didn't really say, but I think everybody knows just on our final verdict right here. Why not MLS? Why we're against it? It's a consensus, I think, from a lot of the fan base, because how do you hone your skills? How do you grow as a player? How do you improve, especially if you're going to be playing at the 10 when we want to punch above our weight? How is he going to have his performances that he would have in MLS with so much space and time on the ball translated when he plays higher level opposition? Kind of tough. You have to stay in Europe. I will say, I think he has some ancestry in Portugal. You can trace it back to Portugal. I think I read it sometime. Jorge Mendes is Portuguese. I know Portuguese clubs with Americans don't really have a good history of even paying the players, let alone pay good salaries. But I think it would be a good move. It's a wild shot. I don't think it'll happen. I think he will have to get a move at some point. Surely it will happen. But maybe it's more likely for him to change agents again and then progress with a different career path, because he's not the most attractive player in Mendes' portfolio. So that begs the question to you guys. What do you think? Do you think this was a sign, a hopeful sign, as we are staying a little bit more optimistic that he gets minutes, either plays for a move, but at least to have the opportunity to be a soccer player, not a practicer, for the remaining of the season? I think he should stay put at Dortmund. Let us know in the comments below if you think he should try a loan again. He should go to MLS. Some people are agreeing with that. So I'm curious to see. We'll make sure to respond to all of the comments. Make sure to share with your friends as well. Leave us any video ideas if you want any videos that are more focused on one player singularly, like this one. Would love to do it as well. So leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.